And welcome to my weekly livecast for Meyer Games. I am Jamie, and welcome. This is a special livecast because today is also the monthly e-newsletter day and our pre-order for Wingspan Oceania. If you're watching this and you're having problems pre-ordering it on our website is struggling right now from the traffic. However, if you look at the e-newsletter link that I posted in the description over off to the side, it can take you directly to our website, which is separate from our web store and our website and web store are separate. The web store is working just fine, and that's where you can actually pre-order the expansion. Our website is just where we discuss what the expansion is. So either way, you're going to end up having to go to the web store. I'm sorry the website isn't working right now, but the web store is fine. You can go ahead and pre-order there. I appreciate you doing that. But yeah, thank you for joining me today to talk about Wingspan Oceania, some other random topics that I have, things that I've been playing, things that we're doing here at Meyer Games, other topics that I brought up in our monthly e-newsletter. So I'll have that up on my other screen right now so I can refer to it. But yeah, the main focus, as you can tell if you got the e-newsletter, is on Wingspan Oceania. That's the main focus today. We are really excited for what Elizabeth Hargrave has designed here and what Natalia and Anna have illustrated in this game, or this expansion to the game Wingspan. It includes 95 new birds illustrated by Natalia and Anna, and I think they did a wonderful job with it. They put so much time and effort into every illustration. And Elizabeth, I love what she did with this design. Normally, I would refer you to our website to see what the design is all about because I've done a bunch of design diaries about what's in this expansion. But our website isn't working right now, so I'll just describe in brief that for the most part, this is like the other expansion. This is a more stuff expansion. You get more bonus cards, more gold tiles, more bird cards. But we also added a few twists, and they all center around nectar. Nectar is a new resource that you can gain in the game, and it interacts with the game in a few different ways. One, there are 17 out of the 95 bird cards that have a nectar cost. So to play the bird, you need to have a nectar, which is just another food token. To get a nectar, we actually have new here's three of them, 5 new food dice. And on some of the sides of these dice, as you can kind of see here, there are nectar tokens. So you can get nectar from the bird feeder. There are also some bird cards that give you nectar. And also, the player mat, which I don't have conveniently out of my Wingspan Oceania box here, but the player mat there are new player mats in this expansion that you use whenever you play with Nectar. And the player mats have it's the same format as the original, but they offer different bonuses that you can gain, different things that you can do that you couldn't do on the original bird mat, like reset the bird feeder, reset the bird card, the bird tray. And a slightly different payout for what you get, the different benefits you get, the food, the eggs, the cards that you draw. And there are some nectar interactions on there. And also along with nectar, whenever you spend nectar, you put it on the corresponding row on your player mat. And at the end of the game, you compare where you spent nectar compared to where other players spent nectar. And there's a little area majority thing there. So if I spent more nectar than you in the forest habitat, then I get some points, and maybe you get some points, or maybe you don't get any points there. Also, the one other twist with nectar is that nectar is somewhat transient in terms of a food or a material, and so it goes away at the end of the round. So even though it's very powerful, it's a wild resource that you use in the game. It goes away at the end of each round. So yeah, that's one of the main features of Wingspan Oceania. I can come back and answer any questions you have about that. But let me pop over and see if there are any questions here in the comments. I see Carlos says, there was a time when you matched your Sunday top 10 videos to a game that you were working on. It was clear because at the end you usually said something about, I have been thinking about this because of a game I'm working on. Did you stop saying those things because you don't want to spoil anything? Or has it just been that the games that you're working on haven't been a topic worthy of a top 10? That's a great question, Carlos. I would say a lot of my top 10 topics still, the inception for them still comes from something that I'm thinking about, something that I'm working on. Although they have gone beyond that too. But maybe I've just stopped saying it, but a lot of them definitely still apply to that. Like I did one about my favorite maps in games recently, and I was thinking about a map in a game that I was working on. I think maybe I just didn't say it out loud. I'm not too worried about spoilers, though. Although there are a few instances of those videos that I made, like a favorite exploration video where I said I was working on it, and it's very clear now how long my exploration game has taken to design. And sometimes I talk about games that I'm working on that, I mean, nothing happens with those games. They just don't end up, maybe it doesn't even end up being an exploration game, or it ends up not working out. So I guess I'm not worried about saying it as long as people understand that when I say that I'm working on something, it doesn't mean that it actually will be published. Looks like Ryan, my co-designer for Scythe: The Rise of Fenris, is joining me for a little bit today. Thanks for hopping in, Ryan. Chris says, "How are the cats doing today?" And you can actually see Biddy in the background here. Biddy's taking a little nap on his chair near the window. He's doing well, and I think Walter is probably napping as well. They usually nap through these live casts. Before I forget, I'll do my chocolate of the day, and I'm gonna go with, yeah. So we get this Universal Yums monthly treat box where the treats from a different country are featured, kind of like the things that you'd find in a convenience store in that country. And we did Colombia recently, and they had a couple different chocolate treats that I really enjoy. White chocolate treats. Both of these will be my chocolate of the day. I'll probably have a little taste of these when I'm done with the live cast. We've really enjoyed that Yum box, just trying treats from around the world. Let's see. Elaine says, do international retailers get MSRP and then adjust to currency exchange? International retailers. MSRP is still like okay, so it kind of depends here, Elaine. So if we sell directly to a retailer, which we do sell directly to a few retailers around the world, it's all in USD. There is a currency conversion when they pay, but it just happens behind the scenes. MSRP is in US dollars there. Same for if we sell to a distributor, but sometimes distributors and localization partners might change the MSRP for their region, and that's okay with us as long as it's a reasonable change and not a huge inflation or deflation. And at that point, they're doing it in their local currency. Yeah. Robbie says, thanks, Jamie, for bringing excellent games to the market. Just introduced a friend to viticulture on Tabletopia an hour ago. He is ready to buy a copy now. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for introducing your friend to one of our games. It always means a lot to me when someone takes the time to teach any of our games to someone new, especially someone new to the hobby. Tim says he's really enjoying the Wingspan Oceania expansion. Tim participated in the charity auction we did last month, and he got an early advance copy for being one of the winning auction bidders in that charity. Thanks, Tim, for doing that, and thanks for playing it. Let's see. Chat says, I know you haven't mentioned it yet, but are there plans for a pendulum expansion? If you can share. Currently, we don't have plans for one. I think it will happen at some point, but it's got to come from Travis and Travis's excitement to continue building that world and continue building that game. Travis is the designer of Pendulum. I've said this already, but just in case anyone's joining us now and you're struggling to get to our website, as far as I know, it is still down, but our web store is live. And so if you look in the description of this video, you can see a link directly to our web store, which is working just fine. You can go there and pre-order Wingspan Oceania there. Hopefully everything's still working fine on our web store, but yeah, it seems to be live and working just fine. Steiner says, isn't it daunting knowing you have to come up with new mechanisms and new bird powers for 4 more Wingspan expansions? I think that certainly is daunting for Elizabeth, but she has a long list of ideas to check out. I think that honestly, there are plenty of ideas for us, for Elizabeth in particular, to explore. It's just the viability of those ideas and whether or not they actually work in practice. So it's one thing, ideas are not easy, but there are plenty of ideas, but actually having the time to test them and see which ones work, that's the difficult part. That is daunting, absolutely. Mackenzie from the Meeple Street is joining us today. Mackenzie was one of the reviewers who got an early copy of Wingspan Oceania. You can check out her review. Normally, I'd send you to her website to check out that review, but Mackenzie, maybe she can link the review to going to the Meeple Street, her website, in the comments below. Adam says, will there be a big box for Wingspan or any details on the 3rd expansion? Definitely not details on the 3rd expansion. We're just talking about the 2nd expansion today. But the big box, we are working on a big box with an organizer for Wingspan. And just want to clarify, there's no gameplay elements in the big box. There's just going to be a box with a modular organizer to hold all Wingspan content, past, present, and future. We are working on that. It'll probably be something that we're ready for in 2021. George says he enjoyed listening to my recent interview on the Covenant podcast. Yeah, it's always fun for me to join the folks at Team Covenant to talk about the game industry. And I did that maybe a week or so ago, and I think it went live a couple days ago. So if you follow Covenant or so, Meyer, you might check out that podcast on, I think it's called the Covenant Cast. Chris says, what have you learned about yourself as you reflect on this year? Ooh, that's a big question, Chris. I did have a nice chat yesterday with a fellow entrepreneur, and we kind of reflected on the year a little bit in terms of the pandemic and how we are trying to step up and really be better people in terms of social justice and the way we run our companies in terms of social justice, both in ways that mean something to us and in ways that we think add value to the world and to our customers. So that's been a big part about how I've been reflecting on this year, how I can be better, to love people better, to lift other people up better, and to bring joy to other people better. And I'm talking about all even though I'm talking about all people, but also specifically in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah. Jason says, I saw in the e-newsletter that there are counterfeit copies of Wingspan being sold. When you learn about something like that, how do you go about combating counterfeiting and getting those copies off the shelves? I don't know if they're actually on the shelves, Jason. We've mostly become aware of them in online stores. When we see them on Amazon in the UK and the US, we report them to Amazon. We let Amazon know that there's a seller selling counterfeit copies. We also have been trying to find the source of it. We think the source is in China. We know it's not connected to our manufacturer in China. It's pretty clear that this manufacturer, whoever is making it, scanned a copy of Wingspan and is using that as the counterfeit copies. And so really we're trying to find the source and to communicate things like this to you all in the e-newsletter, that there are counterfeit copies out there that you need to look out for. I mean, in some ways, the number one way that you can ensure that you're getting a real copy of Wingspan is to buy it from us. But there are many retailers, I mean, the vast majority of retailers around the world have legitimate copies of Wingspan. It's probably just a few odd sellers on Amazon and a few other places that have it. But I don't know. It's just we try to keep an eye on it and communicate to the platforms like Amazon when we see it happen. And hopefully we can eventually find the source. Charles says, are you ever going to do a big box after all the expansions are done? Yeah, you might have just caught my answer to that, Charles. Yeah, we are currently actually working on a Wingspan big box solution with an organizer. It won't have any gameplay components, elements in it. It'll just be a box and an organizer. And even though we were originally going to wait until all the expansions were done, I realized kind of after packing up my Wingspan Oceania copy that it was maybe a little bit more urgent than that. I think people kind of need that solution now. Or in the near future. And so that's why we're already working on it. And we will be kind of, even though we don't know exactly what's in all the future expansions, we have a rough idea. There will be more bird cards for sure. Lots more bird cards. So we need to have plenty of space for lots of bird cards. Maybe ideally there will be more eggs. We need room for plenty of eggs, things like that. And we're going to make it modular enough so that if anyone has already invested money in a third-party insert, that they can maybe just take out a section of the organizer and put in the insert that they already bought. Adil says, would you consider offering an expansion bundle for some looking to buy both expansions? Just wondering. I appreciate you asking about that. We're currently not offering that. We do have some bundle things on our website, but we've moved more towards a strategy where we occasionally discount a specific product. It's not part of a bundle. We just discount a specific product. We're definitely not doing that during the pre-order. Oceania is not discounted, and we have limited copies of Wingspan European too, so we're not discounting that. I did, however, discount Wingspan itself a little bit to invite more people into the Wingspan world. So Wingspan itself is discounted a little bit on our web store right now. Patrick says he just ordered Oceania from our official site. Do you automatically send the package from the nearest center? I'm from Europe and the site is American. Yes, we know where we need to send it, and so all orders in Europe, for example, will go to our fulfillment center in the UK, or we'll send those orders to the UK, and it will be sent from there. It is all automated. Tim says, similar, and I'll take a break from questions in a second and jump back to my fun little topics here. I really don't have anything all that important, but yeah, maybe I'll keep going with questions here. Tim says, similar to in Catan where there was a robber preventing resource collection, what if there was a bird hunter in Wingspan that took out opponents' birds? Yeah, that just doesn't seem like it's in the spirit of Wingspan, Tim, but I appreciate the idea. Chris says, does the bin chicken card in the Oceania expansion have any powers? It does, yeah. It interacts with the discard pile, kind of. This is the white ibis, is that the real name of the bird? And Elizabeth designed it very specifically to interact with the discard pile. Simon says, at what point in the design stage do you decide if your game is going to use miniatures, standees, meeples, or tokens, or a mixture of all? What drives that decision? Simon, I'm usually thinking about that, since I'm both a publisher and a designer, I'm usually thinking about that right from the start. What type of table presence do I want to have? And a meeple is very different than a miniature. A meeple is pretty small. A miniature is often much bigger. So that impacts some of the board space decisions that I'm making in the game, things like that. So I'm thinking about that from the very beginning. So it's an element of space, what seems consistent and best for the theme, what is right for the target price for the game. So the cost, the price of the game does factor into it as well. And part of it's just kind of instinct, like what feels right for this game. Does this feel like a miniatures game? Does this feel like a custom meeples game? Does it feel like a cardboard tokens game or standees? Yeah, it really depends on the feel and my instinct for that. Gary says, did you consider stickers for the original Wingspan boards instead of brand new boards? No, absolutely not, Gary. But that's a great question, because a key answer to this here is that the original Wingspan player mats are still completely useful in the game. They're still important. They still have a lot of utility. Really, the new player mats are primarily designed to be used when you play with Nectar. So when you're not playing with Nectar, you typically would not play with the original player mats. You can, I'm sorry, I may mix it up. When you're playing with Nectar, that's when you play with the new player mats. If you're not playing with Nectar, you would typically play with the original player mats. And so, yeah, stickers were definitely not an option, especially since, think about this, Gary, not everyone's going to buy Oceania. And so in the future, someone might have Wingspan and Wingspan European and some other expansion. And basically, we need to be able to combine a bunch of different expansions. And those expansions are always going to look back at the original player mats. Ideally, we'll make sure those expansions also are compatible with the Oceania player mats, but it's just, yeah, I definitely want people to be clear about that, and I probably haven't said it very well here, but do not throw away or do anything with your old player mats, your original player mats. They are still very, very important, and you'll probably use them in many games, especially teaching games of Wingspan. They're simpler to look at than the new player mats in Oceania. Adam says big box expansion or details on the next expansion. So there's no big box expansion. We're not talking about the next expansion today, but I have mentioned that we are working on a big box storage solution for Wingspan that includes no gameplay elements. Chad says my wife and I just adopted a puppy who has similar coloring to Walter and Biddy, and that made me curious. How did you find Walter and Biddy? Biddy I adopted as a kitten from a rescue shelter. He was maybe 6 weeks old at that point. And Walter, I adopted as a companion for Biddy around maybe 5 years later, a little bit around that time. And I adopted also Walter from a different shelter. Walter at that point was a full-grown cat, and we really didn't know his exact age. I think he was probably around 2 or 3, but he could have been a little older, a little younger. But he wasn't a kitten at that point anymore. Chris has a nice comment. Chris is working on being a game designer and developing games, and it's great to hear, Chris. Thank you for saying that. Tomas says, what is the best way to get people to subscribe to your email list before Kickstarter campaign? Price discount, extra game piece, etc. I think the best way is to share something exciting for people that they want to hear. Remove all the gimmicks from it and just create something awesome and exciting that people want to know about when you're ready to launch. That's, I think, the number one thing. And then share that with people. Let people make it easy to find, and share that link. I think the secondary thing that you can do that maybe is a little gimmicky, but I think worth it, is something related to some amount of goodwill. I think Thundergriff does this really well. They did something with Tang Garden, one of their campaigns a couple years ago, where if you signed up for a launch notification, they would donate to an organization that is going to plant a tree. So for every sign up they got, they're going to plant a tree. And I think backers also got a little bonus thing if you had a sign up notification. I think that wasn't the main feature of it. It was more that if you gave them your email for a launch notification, they would plant a tree, which I think is awesome. I think that type of thing is really, really cool. Let's see, just looking for other questions down here. Lots of questions today. I don't have any super special comments. I mean, I'll just mention real quick, I did a video about perfect information games last Sunday. I did blog post about kind of a interesting blog post this past Monday about how I had to blur one of my recent game design videos about disc golf because I ended up accidentally showing my phone number on the backside of a disc golf disc. So I realized that there was a way on YouTube Studio for me to blur part of the video. I also did a post on last Thursday about flash sales. You can check those out on our website once our website is working again. And other things on our web, actually, we're talking about Wingspan Oceania mostly today, but we have a few other digital updates. One big update is that we are working now with a developer to create a full AI digital version of Tapestry. Board Game Arena is also working on a version that you can play against other human opponents, but a full AI version is now in the works. And you can see information about that in the Tapestry Facebook group. There's now also a Tapestry digital Facebook group run by the developer, George and the Goat. And they'll be gathering feedback and insights and looking for beta testers there if that's interesting to you. Also, Pendulum is we're sold out of Pendulum, but MeepleSource still has some left in stock, and they offered a special discount that I put in our e-newsletter that if you use this discount code Pendulum10 and you put Pendulum in your cart on a MeepleSource order, you can get that 10% off Pendulum and everything else in your cart. That's pretty cool. Oh, okay, I'll come back to that in a second because it looks like Facebook is scrolling past questions. If I missed your question, feel free to post it again. Justo says, what's my opinion on tin boxes? I prefer cardboard boxes, just in terms of how they fit on my shelf. Justin says, I've shown off a lot of cool t-shirts designed for your games. I'd love to create a Wingspan t-shirt for my birder dad. Is there a process or guidelines for us Stillmeyer fans with graphic design skills? If you're just looking to create like one shirt for your dad, you can just do it. But if you're looking to sell it, yeah, you'll need to contact me, and we have some guidelines about how that works. There's no royalties or anything, but it's basically you just need to not ask us for any special favors and not pretend that it's an official Stillmeyer product. Looks like Facebook is scrolling past a bunch of questions as I'm reading them right now. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit and find any other questions. Hans, I see, asked, is our website down? Our website is down, but our web store is just fine. And you can see a link to that in the description here on the video. Let's see. And thank you, Brian, for posting a link directly to our web store. I appreciate that. I'm going to butcher this name here, but Pyoy Trek says, how many copies of Wingspan have sold since its release? So Wingspan released in March of 2019, and we've sold 500,000 copies of it since then, in a variety of languages. I think 25 different languages. Ali says, have I tried Among Us yet? The digital game Among Us. No, I haven't tried it yet. Have I read any good books during lockdown? I have been making my way through the Wheel of Time series. I'm just about finished with book 14 right now. I did skip a bunch of books and just read summaries for them, but I read books 1 through 6 and then skipped to book 14. Mostly because I wanted to read some other books. Darren says, considering the amazing number of copies sold of Wingspan, how did you decide how many copies to print of this latest expansion? We went to distributors and a few key retailers in advance and said, let us know how many you want us to make, and we will make them for you. And then on top of that, we said, okay, how many should we make for ourselves to sell directly based on what our fulfillment centers can handle, what we think we need. I mean, it's a bit of a guessing game at that point. But and also we looked at the number of people who had signed up for a launch notification on our website, things like that. And so all that data went into making us making around a 55,000 unit print run of Wingspan Oceania in the first print run. Christy says, how many expansions are you planning at this point? Christy, the plan is to have one expansion for every continent. So the core game handled North America, then we did Europe, and then we're doing Oceania now, and there are 4 other continents left. So a total of 6 expansions, and the core game covers the original North American continent. Adam says, what will be the order for Wingspan expansions? Adam keeps asking about that. We're not going to reveal that, Adam. Justo says, have I ever met in person a famous board game designer like Stefan Feld or Uwe Rosenberg? If yes, what did you two say to each other? I have talked to Uwe, but not in person. Who have I talked to that's really famous? A lot of maybe more content creators that are famous, like Tom Vassell or Rado. I've gotten to meet them in person. Rodney at Watch It Played, all really nice people. Have I met a famous game designer? I'm sure I have, and I'm just blanking on it right now. Uh, oh yes, okay, thanks, Megan. Megan chimed in. I actually did get to play games with. Oh shoot, I'm gonna blank on this very famous person's name right now. Um, Architects of the West Kingdom. Somebody help me out here. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking on this, but he was a wonderful person. Architects West of the West. I'm looking at Board Game Geek right now. Shem Phillips. I'm so sorry, Shem, if you're watching this. But yes, I got to meet Shem and had a wonderful evening with Shem and a few other people in New Zealand when I was there last year at a board game cafe. We just played games and chatted and had a great time. So yeah, that's probably one of the most famous game designers that I've met in person. Kenneth said, "Oh, Kenneth, okay, Facebook is doing the thing where it scrolls past questions as I'm reading them. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. If I missed your question, feel free to post it again. I'm going to jump back in right at Daniel's question. Here we go. He says he recently received his copy of Glenmore Chronicles. I really like the sticker set that comes in the box. It seems like an easy way to give your game components a somewhat premium feel out of the box. Is there any reason as a publisher it might not make sense to include something like that in the box? I think you're talking about the stickers that you put on the wooden components in that box. I'm glad you like them. I think sometimes people just don't care about the stickers or they don't want to go through the process of stickering them. Oftentimes I hear if people see stickers, they think, why didn't they just silkscreen print the tokens instead? Which I think is fairly reasonable for a premium game. And sometimes the tokens just aren't big enough for stickers. But you're right, Daniel. There are cases where stickers are a perfectly viable addition. There is also, like anything that you're printing, there is a cost to stickers. Even a small sticker sheet is actually not all that cheap because you're printing multiple layers there. Um, but you're right. It is something that you can do. It is an option. Anson says, "Will I ever do a giveaway?" Probably not. No, I mean, every now and then I do something fun on Instagram where I show a bunch of coins and I say, okay, whoever guesses the total value of all the metal coins, all the viticulture metal coins in this pile, I'll send them a free set of coins, and then I do a discount for the next couple of days for anyone who uses a special promo code to buy those coins. That's probably the closest that I get to doing giveaways. Okay. Pablo says, "May I ask why you weren't on the Essen Spiel?" I did actually. I did participate a little bit in Essen Spiel, which through a kind of a discussion that we did about Scythe Digital. But I guess why wasn't my company? Why didn't we have a virtual booth there? And really, we just don't have a convention focus at Stonemaier Games. Um, Maybe we should have given it a try. Now that I understand better about what it is, I think companies just had virtual booths where they hung out and showed stuff to people. But I don't know if people want to see what we have at Stonemaier Games, they can always just go to our website. Dorta says, excited about the new expansion for Wingspan. Sign up for a championship, but can I add other items to the pre-order for Wingspan? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can add anything you'd like to the pre-order. Jake says, will the European expansion be added to the Steam version of Wingspan? I believe it's already on the Tabletopia version. If it's not on the Tabletop Simulator version, I hope so, but it's totally up to Tabletop Simulator. They're the ones that actually add that content to it. Joshua says, do I still have a Japanese themed game in the works or a Japan themed game? I'm still kind of in the brainstorming stages of one, but I'm not actively working on one. Alexa says, I love to hear you chat about the sensory experience of playing board games. This year has held much more digital gaming for most of us who are missing that sensory nature of gaming. Yeah, I totally agree. I really, really do miss that. It has been about a year since your video, my favorite sensory elements in tabletop games. Can you give us an update? Are there any new games you have seen or played in the past year that have a particularly engaging sensory aspect, or older games that you find yourself continuing to be drawn to for their sensory enjoyment? That is a fantastic question, Alexa. Maybe a little tough for me to think of off the top of my head. I think some of the things on that list were like the bags in Sheriff of Nottingham. That really nice snap of snapping them open. The textures, actually, one from this year, the texture in Project L, the tiles in Project L are really, really nice. They use a special texture on those tiles. What else? Any other new games this year that I really liked the tactile or the sensory element to? Azul, I love reaching into a bag of Azul tiles and selecting the tiles from that bag. And same with Cracks of Quedlinburg, especially with the nice upgraded tokens in that game. Those are a few that come to mind right off the top of my head. Let me look at see if any of my favorite games of 2020 have a sensory element to them. I don't want to reveal that list yet, but let's see. Uh, Sensory element. I'm not seeing too many. I've seen a lot of beautiful visual elements in these games, but I wouldn't say overly sensory. But even just like shuffling nice cards that shuffle together well, that feels so good to me. And I miss that when I'm playing digital versions of games. Mike says previously you only did big box once the game was complete. Will the Wingspan big box hold any future expansions? Yes, Mike. Yeah, we're going to design the legendary box for Wingspan is one way we can say it. Legendary box with an organizer, no gameplay content, just box and organizer. We're going to design it to hold all expansion content, past, present, and future. Even though we don't know exactly what's coming in the future, we can plan ahead for it and leave plenty of modularity and plenty of space for that stuff. Michael says, I'm interested in getting into game design and development. Any advice on how to get started from concept to release? I'm a graphic artist. Michael, yeah, that's a great question. I would say, I mean, really a good starting point. There's a page on our website that says on the Meyer Games website that is about how to design a tabletop game. I would recommend going there and starting there. There's some resources there that you can start out. There's a video that I made about like 10 steps on how to design a game and things like that. That's a good place to start. And actually, as I was clicking over on our website to talk about that, it looks like our website might actually be working now. The only downside, though, is that certain things aren't updated. Let's see if I can get this updated while I'm live a little bit. So one of the things I do on a morning of a pre-order is that I bring up a couple different pages on our website and I prepare to launch updates to those pages at the right time, like when everything goes live. And then our website crashed, and when our website crashes, I don't have access to even the edited versions of those pages. So let's see. Okay, let's see if I can restore this autosave. I'm going to try to restore something that I prepared earlier for the Wingspan Oceania page. I was ready to click like update and go live, and then everything crashed. Well, hopefully it'll work now. It's taking its time. I'll come back to that in a second. Scott says, when will the expansions be coming to the app as a DLC? I think you're talking about Wingspan, I'm guessing here, Scott, and it's really up to the developers. For any digital game, we license the game to a digital developer, and it ends up in their hands for them to take care of. Oh, shoot, nope, that's not the right autosave. Okay, let's go back to a previous version of this page. Sorry about this, folks. Just trying to get this thing live. I think I'm going to have to re-edit the whole thing. Nope. Okay, so I can get that. How can I get that live? I'm sorry for doing this live right now, but I'd really like this page to be live if I can. I don't know how to do it. Okay, I'm going to change. How do I do this thing? So WordPress is really nice. It's letting me compare the two different versions of the website, but like the one that I had edited earlier, but it won't let me revert to the newer version, and I don't know how to do that. Okay, well maybe I'll just edit while I talk here a little bit. Because the link, I want these links to work. Shoot. Okay, sorry. This is the tough thing about going live on a pre-order day. Ideally, everything would work, but when it doesn't work, it causes some complications. I'm just going to update the link for now, and then I'll update the rest of the stuff later. So the link, I'm going to change the pre-order now from Stonemeyer. Sorry, I know this is very entertaining. Let me see if I can answer a question while I'm doing this. Jason says, what is the one game that when you saw it produced and played it, you thought, man, I wish Meyer could have published this? Well, I thought about that for lots of games. Tzolk'in was certainly one of them. Ra, I really love Ra. I mean, there are lots of games that I love, and maybe don't necessarily fit into this what we do at Stonemaier Games. But Tzolk'in, if it had been a 5-player game out of the gate, would have been perfect for us, I think. Okay, we got the pre-order. Almost there. Got that. And just update that link. And I will update the rest later. Hopefully that'll work. All right. Sorry for that little editing thing. Our website has been very finicky and mostly down this morning. And I just want people, if they go to the Wingspan Oceania page on our website, I want them to see a link to the pre-order page, which wasn't there before. But now it is there, and they should be able to pre-order it. And I'll fix the rest of that stuff on after I'm done being live. Thanks for your patience there. I appreciate it. Gavin says, do I ever participate in the Board Game Geek Secret Santa? You know, I have never done that. No, I haven't. I've heard it's a lot of fun, though. Rolling with Rock says, will there be an Antarctica expansion? And yes, there will someday be an Antarctica expansion for Wingspan. Maybe we'll surprise you with the order. I think the natural thing would be to do that one last, but maybe we'll surprise you and do it earlier. Ashley says, will there be limited printings of the expansions? I.e., if printings run out, will you do reprints? That's a great question, Ashley. Our philosophy at Stonemaier Games is that if there's enough demand for us to make anything that we've made before, we will make it, or even stuff that we haven't made yet. So, no, the nothing in the long term, nothing that we make is limited. In the short term, everything is limited based on what we printed. So we've already printed Wingspan Oceania, and so we are limited right now based on how much we actually printed and what our fulfillment centers can handle. But in the long run, if there's more demand for it, and I think there will be, we'll make more copies of it. It'll just maybe take a little while. Ernani says, usually there's a discount during pre-order. Why did you decide against discounting Wingspan Oceania? Usually there is a discount over a certain price. Like but for lower price products, usually between 20 and 30, we don't always discount them, partially because all of our champions already get a $10 discount on them. So if you're Stonemaier champion, you get a $10 discount. So if we discount something too much, it makes it not profitable for us. And if we're not profitable, we can't continue to make stuff. So usually around 35 or 40 is when we're always going to have a discount on something. But between 20 and 30, it's really debatable based on what we can do. And I think there's $30 of value in this expansion, maybe even more. And 95 bird cards, 5-player mats, new bird dice, new bonus tokens, a new Altama stuff, new eggs. I mean, I think there's even more than $30 worth of stuff in this box. Choi says, do I think Spiel Digital supported publishers well? I don't know. I actually didn't go on and look there. I probably should have, but I didn't look. We're just not a very convention-focused company, so I didn't think to look. I did read an article from Ignacy Trebuchet about his opinions of it, and I think his opinions said had some good and some bad to it. He did say it was probably the best digital convention run this year, or big digital convention, but I think conventions are still kind of learning on the fly about how to do that. Diego says, have I ever thought about making a new brand or line of games under the Stonemaier umbrella where you can publish good games that don't necessarily follow the Stonemaier guidelines? We have talked about it, yeah. But every time we talk about it, we think, okay, we do this for a reason. We target specific games for a reason, and it's because those are the games that we are the most excited to pursue on an ongoing basis, and to spend a lot of time and effort and energy on. Because we do spend, on every game, every product we make, we spend a ton of time and money and energy and resources to make it as great as it can possibly be. We don't always succeed, but we try. And so to divert some of that time and energy to something that we are not quite as passionate about and is not consistent with our brand, the answer just so far has been no. That doesn't make sense for us. I'm guessing that someday, though, someone will just submit like the best 2-player game in the world to us, and we'll have a really hard time saying no to that. Even though our submission guidelines don't accept 2-player only games, it could happen. I think it is possible. Zach says, I may have missed this already, but I see some Tapestry expansion news. Will there be a big box at some point for Tapestry as well? I don't think so, because the original box for Tapestry is already pretty darn big. I think the key is in the long term that if you want to hold all of your Tapestry stuff in one box, you're just going to have to remove the original insert. Yeah. Joshua says, "How did I come up with my cat's names?" He says, "We're getting a puppy soon and having a hard time deciding." Biddy went through a process. I got Biddy when I had a different girlfriend a long time ago, and that girlfriend had a habit of renaming Biddy on an ongoing basis. And so Biddy's given name is Baby Bok Choy, and that name eventually became Bitten Kitten, and then Bitten Boy, and then Biddy Boy, and then Biddy. And then we broke up, and I didn't want to keep confusing Biddy. I kept Biddy, and she did not. And so I decided to keep calling him Biddy. For Walter, I wanted a name that didn't sound like Biddy, so when I called him, Biddy wouldn't think that I'm calling Walter or vice versa. And so I actually don't know what else went into that thought process, but I kind of just like the name Walter. He kind of just looked like a Walter to me. Nathan says, when you say, quote, when you're playing with Nectar, does that simply mean that playing with the new dice and select cards that require Nectar? Yes, so Nathan, I mean, I think in most cases, it really depends on how you play. So in the Oceania box, we recommend, or we say that one of the ways to continue playing Wingspan is to choose two different sets of things, like choose European and Oceania, choose Oceania in the core game, choose European in the core game, and play with those things in a game. You can, however, just mash everything together and play with everything together. And if you do that, you will encounter Nectar in the game, and so you'll need to play with the new player mats. Alternatively, you could mash everything together except for 17 of the bird cards in Oceania. And if you do that, then you don't need to use any of the Nectar elements. But you can. It kind of, Wingspan is becoming more modular as we release more expansions. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to play with, or you can just mash everything together and play with everything. Nathan has another question about, would it be viable to just ignore Nectar birds that are shuffled into your deck when they come up if you aren't using Nectar? Yes, you could do that. If you want to play with all birds and you're not playing with a Nectar mat, you could just ignore Nectar whenever it comes up. And you can't even use the Oceania player mats when you're not playing with Nectar, although they're designed around the idea of using Nectar. But you might like them. The layout is slightly different on the Oceania player mat, so you might like that layout more than the original layout. It's kind of up to you. You can try both. Tony says, once in a while, our group plays a King of the Geeks version of Trivial Pursuit. We take the Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Star Trek Trivial Pursuit games and combine them, forcing you to answer a question from each if you want to move on. Which is actually nice that you mentioned this here, because I recently filmed the video about my favorite IP games, intellectual property games, and I think that will go live this Sunday or maybe the next Sunday. Tony says, do you have any house rules or creative interpretations of games that you play with your groups? Not many, no. It's pretty rare that I house rule a game, but I'm sure there are a few. What is one of the house rules that we play with? I'm looking at my collection of games over here, or part of my collection. Off the cuff, I'm not. I know there are a few games that we always have like a little house rule that we always play with, but I can't think of any off the top of my head, Tony. But I like that. That sounds like a fun way to do Trivial Pursuit. Okay, just looking for other questions here. I guess real quick, games that I played recently. I played the new Mysterium Park the other day. Got a copy and we played two player. It actually worked pretty well two player, but I think it is probably better at higher player counts too. I played the new Magic set Zendikar Rising on Magic Online. I played The Crew last week at game night on Board Game Arena. Also played Six Nimmt on Board Game Arena, and I tried One Deck Dungeon, which had a surprisingly really interesting skill test mechanism and a lot of interesting choices in the game. I did that digitally as well. Yeah. Oh, and the one other topic that I hadn't covered before on our e-newsletter is that if you have been waiting for the retail release of Tapestry Plans and Ploys, that is this Friday. That is the retail release date for the Tapestry expansion. We still have it in stock on our web store too. Adam says, will future birds in the next expansion use Nectar? And I would say almost definitely not, because one of our expansion philosophies at Stonemaier Games is that we never want someone to buy an expansion and be told, oh, you can't play that unless you have this other expansion too. We always want the expansion to connect back to the core game. So it is possible that there might be a bird in a region that is just so inherently connected with nectar that we might say, okay, we might include it and say this is a bird that you will only use if you actually own Oceania. But we'll keep that very, very small if we do it at all. Tim says, has a decision been made on the packaging of the double-sided neoprene mats and when they'll be released? 5-pack single mat. There will be single mat, just to give people the flexibility of buying the exact number that they want. They'll be in a plastic bag, and yeah. Release date, I don't know. Depends on how long they take to manufacture. Kenneth says, I was wondering what the design process of not including teal power birds in Oceania involved, and will the future expansions include teal and yellow abilities? That's a good question, Kenneth. We kind of wanted each expansion to have its own special power in it that's unique to that expansion. It is possible in future expansions that we will divert from that strategy and include some new ideas related to those past expansions. Because the rules are pretty light on those abilities. It doesn't take a lot to include the rules in those expansion rulebooks. So as long as other special components aren't required, we might do that in the future. But so far, we've just said, okay, we want this ability to feel special to this expansion, and so we'll only have it in this expansion. Elizabeth may have had another reason. I don't know if Elizabeth is watching this right now, but she may have had another reason for not including teal powers in this expansion. It might be that she already had used all of the ideas she had for teal powers for the time being, but I don't know if that's true. Sam says, WizKids, the new WizKids game, Seastead, has a really cool I Cut You Choose mechanism. Do you currently have any games you're working on that are using I Cut You Choose? I'm glad you mentioned that, Sam, because I love I Cut You Choose, and I didn't know that Seastead had that, so I need to check that out. I am not currently working on any games that use I Cut You Choose, though. Kim says, will I be putting a placeholder for the legendary box on your site so we can do the notify us? That's a good question, Kim. I would say for now, maybe the best way is just to stay subscribed to our e-newsletter, our general e-newsletter. Probably be best for now, given that I have no idea how long it will take for us to get this big box organizer thing right for Wingspan. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through looking for questions here. Again, if I missed your question, feel free to re-ask it. Sometimes Facebook scrolls past questions that I miss. I know I missed a chunk of them earlier. Tej says, I'm familiar with a lot of games. Do you have a count of how many games you've played, either total in your life or for a particular period? Also, have you ever shared a shelfie of the games you own? Inquiring minds would like to see. I have shared a shelfie, usually with cats somewhere on the shelf. If you go to Instagram and scroll through, you'll probably see at least one of my shelfies there. And I should probably do maybe a shelfie update in the near future. So maybe I'll do that on Instagram at Jamie Stegmeyer. Do I have a total count? I think I always rate games when I play them on Board Game Geek. So let's see what Board Game Geek says is my count of games played. Go to my profile here. Looks like I have rated 783 different games. So that's probably my play count, or very close to the number of games that I played, or the number of different games that I played. Yeah. Let's see here. Jonathan says, he was surprised to see a mention of the second Tapestry expansion that's in the works in the progress chart on our e-newsletter. What little teasers can you give? Today, I just want to focus on this expansion here, the Wingspan Oceania expansion. So I don't want to give any teasers for that one yet, but we are actively working on another Tapestry expansion. Christy says, my kids love My Little Scythe. Do you recommend any new kid games? That's a good question, Christy, but I don't have kids myself. I have nieces and nephews, but I don't get to see them very often, so I don't think too often about games that kids can play. I do know that I have, throughout my entire life, I have loved Scotland Yard and I have loved Blockus. So I think those might be worth playing with kids. Yeah. Rafal says, Isle of Skye used to be your #1 game. Do I still enjoy playing it, as it is no longer in my top 10? I do still enjoy playing it, but it gets to the table a lot less often. I think part of that is due to the pandemic, because I should probably just try it at 2 players to see how it is at 2, but I don't get too excited about it at 2 because of the I Cut You Choose mechanism in it, or the I Price You Choose mechanism. But I should just try it to see if that is actually true. I really just love it with 3 and more players, and so I haven't gotten it to the table in a long time. I did not particularly enjoy the Journeyman expansion. I did like the Druids expansion a lot more. At the same time, though, I love the base game so much, and there's so much variability in the base game that I probably would just play that if I got it back to the table again. But I do own both of the other expansions at this point. Brian says, any games coming out soon that you're looking forward to? Anything on Kickstarter? I am looking forward to plenty of games that are coming out. There's a game, a new Reiner Knizia tug of war game coming out. Royal something that looked pretty cool. That I think was an Essen announcement. Mysterium Park I was looking forward to. I thought it might be a while. I already got my copy. Pandemic Legacy Season 0. Just got my copy the other day. And Kickstarter, lots of games on Kickstarter that I'm looking forward to. I guess one recent one that I got a notification about is the Tidal Blades. I think that's going to be pretty cool. Jake says, when I license a game to a developer for a digital version, do I retain any editorial control, or are there restrictions placed on the developer and what they ultimately do? He says, like, do they adhere strictly to the board game's rules, or do they have flexibility? Yeah, basically, I trust them to do a great job with the game. And throughout the process, every now and then, I ask them to check in with us and show us what they have. And we have kind of an approval process that it goes through. It's a very loose, kind of unofficial approval process, but it is there in writing in the contract that we get to look at it and approve it at different stages. They can't just take it and run with it and magically tell us we released it. They need to check with us throughout the process to make sure it's going okay. But we usually only bring in developers that we trust to do a great job with it, because we don't want to add too much work to our plate, because we want to focus mostly on the tabletop versions of the games. So part of Joe's job is to kind of review the digital games at various stages, but it is not a huge part of his job, and it's a very, very, very small part of my job. Zach says, have I looked at Endless Winter on Kickstarter? If so, what are my thoughts? I think it looks really cool. I have not backed it. I came close to backing it yesterday, but I'm kind of deciding between a few games that were on Kickstarter that launched yesterday on Kickstarter. There was a Japanese katana game that looked the coolest, but I was hoping for a slightly lower price point to pull the trigger on it. So I don't know. I'm following Endless Winter, but I didn't back it yet. Yeah. Paul says, what is a Stonemaier Champion? That's a great question, Paul. Stonemaier Champion is a program that we have for people who want to support the game design content that I post on YouTube, the Kickstarter crowdfunding and entrepreneurial content that I post on the Stonemaier Games blog, and also get some perks from Stonemaier Games. Those perks include $10 off everything that you order from our web store. Every time you order, you get $10 off. That's for a year. So you pay $15 to become a champion, and you get $10 off everything you order for a year. And you also get you are prioritized whenever we do a pre-order, or really whenever we ship anything. Champion orders are prioritized over non-champion orders. Adrian says, why the limit to 2 copies of the Oceania expansion? We typically limit products that we think will be in high demand, so that people just don't gather up big bunches of them and throw them on eBay. There are exceptions to that. I think we just want to make sure we have enough for everybody, and so we don't want. That's really just the intent there. Sasha says, "Is there a pre-order link? Is the pre-order link live for Oceania expansion? The page hasn't been updated." Yeah, I was trying to update it live, but I don't know if that update actually went through. Let's see if it actually did go through. It was a whole thing this morning. Our website crashed. I wasn't able to edit it, or I did edit it, and then the edit didn't go live. So it's intended to be, but you can also just click through on our e-newsletter to see it there. Yeah, it looks like it is live now if you refresh the page. What else here? Tim says, did I find Mysterium Park harder than the original? It does feel like there's a little extra time pressure. And we almost failed on the first stage of it, which is figuring out the who's innocent and who's not. And the first time that we played, we got down to round 6 or round 5, and we had not done that yet. So maybe it's a little harder. Yeah. George says, when is the retail release date for Wingspan Oceania? It is December 18th. Christy says, will other expansions have new board games as well. Other expansions have new board games as well. You might be asking, Christy, will other expansions have new boards? Oh, the player mats and Wingspan. We don't know. I don't know. It really depends on what Elizabeth creates for those expansions. It certainly is not the goal to have more player mats, but it is possible that it might happen someday. It might just be a rethemed player mat at some point, one that, like in Antarctica, it wouldn't make as much sense to have wetlands and forest and grassland. So maybe we'll do just an artistically different player mat for that area. I'm not really sure yet. Oh, Christy clarified it. Thanks. Your next comment, Christy clarified that. Carol says that the second Tapestry expansion is. She asked, "Is this second Tapestry expansion already done from a design standpoint?" And it is. Yeah, it's definitely in the late stages of design at this point. Essentially done. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Elizabeth jumped in. Thank you, Elizabeth. She clarified the question about why are there no teal powers in this expansion. And she said mostly just wanting to make things different each time, which I think is a great intent for expansions because people can buy, you can pick and choose which expansions you want. You don't have to buy all of them. You can pick the ones that intrigue you the most. John says he ordered Euphoria along with the Wingspan expansion. Thanks, John, for trying another game along with that. Anything that I would suggest to quickly get into it. Inside, I recommended each player try a different action to start. For Euphoria is probably the most difficult game to just start playing because there's a lot of different connected systems. But one of the most basic actions to take at the beginning is to go to one of the different commodity areas. Really, I would say in Euphoria, and actually there's a guide, I think, in the Euphoria rulebook that says some things to think about for your first play. I would think about either getting a new worker, following your active recruit's ability, or moving your active recruit's allegiance forward on the track. And there are a couple different ways where you can do that. You can also work towards constructing a market. There are a few different stages that you have to go through to construct a market, but that can be something to focus on early on as well. Let's see. Elizabeth chimed in to say that she has not designed all the expansions yet. Each one is a lot of work, and that's right. Yeah, Elizabeth spends essentially a full year working on these expansions. It takes a lot of time and effort for her to research the different birds in the area. She really wants to really focus on each of these different continents and create birds that feel like the mechanisms for these birds belong in that continent. And so she spends a lot of time and effort on them. And so a lot is uncertain about what components and mechanisms will come in the future for those expansions. We do have a lot of ideas, but we don't know exactly what Elizabeth will actually implement for those expansions yet. Adam, let's see. Just looking through at other questions here. Carlos says, "What is the game that I enjoyed most during this month?" I've enjoyed a couple different games this month. I really enjoyed the new Magic set, Zendikar Rising. I've enjoyed Marco Polo 2. I've enjoyed The Crew, playing that on Board Game Arena. I enjoyed Mysterium Park recently. And I enjoyed my play of One Deck Dungeon this past weekend. Rafal says, "Do I know when Oceania will hit the retail shops in the UK? The English version will hit retailers on December 18th. Riku says, "Do I have any favorite themes in board games?" I do love, I studied abroad in Japan, so I love themes that have a little bit of a Japanese twist to them. I love medieval, castles, knights, and all that stuff. I love medieval themes. I love fantasy themes. I would say I gravitate slightly more to fantasy than sci-fi in terms of board game themes, whether it's traditional fantasy or new worlds. I like when people create new worlds. And I also like time travel. I like time travel in games. Carol also mentions the Endless Winter campaign on Kickstarter, so maybe I need to take another look at Endless Winter to see if it is my kind of game. And Francesco says Shogun no Katana is the game that I was thinking of, the katana themed game. That does look really cool. Justin says, any update on Codename Cape? So Justin says, sometimes it looks like games go backwards on the chart. And yeah, sometimes we think we're at a good place for a game, and then we realize we're not in as good of a place as we thought. And we have to go back to the drawing board and redo some things. And that's what happened with Codename Cape. That is the code name for a game, not the actual name of the game. Let's see. Ivan says, have I seen the new Dune Imperium game? What do I think of it? I did see an article about it the other day, but I haven't seen a place to actually order it or get core details about it. So if you know of a place to do that, Ivan, I'd love to dig deeper into it. I did hear, unfortunately, that the Dune movie got delayed almost a full year, I think. It was a huge delay, not due to production or anything, but I think probably due to the pandemic, which is unfortunate. I was really looking forward to seeing that movie. Ari says, are there plans for a box that can hold Wingspan with both all expansions? Yes, Ari, yeah, we are actually actively working on designing a big box with an organizer for Wingspan. No gameplay components in the box, just a box and an organizer that will hold all Wingspan elements, past, present, and future in a modular fashion inside the box. James says, how collaborative is the process of working with designers like Elizabeth? I saw a recent talk she gave, and it looked like what she pitched changed a fair bit once Meyer Games picked it up. Collaboration, I think, is the right word here. When we sign a game, or when I'm working on an expansion with another designer for a game, there's a ton of collaboration. Usually, if there's a lead designer, like Elizabeth is absolutely the designer and the lead designer for Wingspan, she is doing the vast majority of the work. She is actually building the prototypes, actually brainstorming ideas, actually implementing those ideas, tweaking them, adjusting them. And every now and then, the designer will send us questions or thoughts or a prototype to play. And we'll play test it here and give feedback on that, on the current state of the game or the expansion. And the designer will then run with that feedback as they wish, and then we'll repeat that process a number of times throughout the design process. And really, it's more of a development process at that point. That's what the process usually looks like. And eventually, we'll get to the blind playtest stage, which we handle, but then it's also collaborative with the designer, where I say, okay, this is all the data and the reports we got from this blind playtest. Here are my thoughts of what we might do with it. What do you think about what we should do with all this feedback? Yeah. Adam says, will there be a mini expansion for birds that are on islands, not mainlands? The current expansions aren't really based on islands or mainlands. They're based on continents. So we don't have any plans for any mini expansions that are island specific because like Oceania, Australia and New Zealand are very much islands. And and there are also surrounding islands that have some birds that are in this expansion as well. Oh, Rodney has a Dune Imperium video. Awesome. Thank you, Ivan. I will check that out. Rodney at Watch It Played. And maybe last question here. It looks like I'm a little bit over time here. If you move expansions to a big box, do you toss the expansion boxes? It's up to you. I think the Wingspan boxes are really beautiful. I'd be hesitant to throw them away, but I understand that that you might need more space on your shelf. So if you need to throw away the originals, that's totally fine. Let's see. Okay. Looks like we are out of questions today, and I am going to take off. So thank you. Oh, okay. Elizabeth says there are a few birds in the expansion from Papua New Guinea as well. So not just from Australia and New Zealand. John says, I see that you own Zaya. I don't own Zaya. I have played it, but I don't own it. Maybe I just haven't marked it as not owned. All right, I'm going to take off. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much if you are participating in the pre-order for Wingspan Oceania. We all really appreciate it, and I'm excited to get that out to you over the course of November and December as our fulfillment centers ship it out. So thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next Wednesday at the same time. Take care.